Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cascadia Inswinger. I'm Eddie Smith, along with my co-host John Floresca. Sorry we weren't able to do our preview show for the Vancouver Whitecaps Portland Timbers this last weekend. Unfortunately, I was sick, and we just weren't able to get around to doing the show. So definitely apologize for that. But let's get into the recap of that match. It was definitely going to be something that was going to be hard on Vancouver to possibly get points out of that, especially losing big to the LAFC the week before. They really wanted to get back into the winning ways, or at least playing better, which they did. Vancouver ended up coming out with a 1-0 loss to Portland. But I think Vancouver played a lot better. Of course, you can play a lot better anytime you give up 6 goals in your previous match and then you only give up 1 in your next. John, what do you think of this game?
Yeah, I think the 1-0 scoreline is a typical Portland game. This was the Portland we saw all of the MIB tournament. Portland scored early and they defend well. You've heard me say it in previous shows. You're probably going to hear me say it in more shows. That's Portland's style. They score early, defend well. And because they score early, they're allowed to hit on the counter more. So sometimes they get into 2-0, 3-0 wins. But you watch this Portland team, they did it to Seattle a week ago. And it's exactly how they love to play their soccer. If they do this, they can go far into the rest of the season. They can go far into the playoffs. It's exactly what you'd expect. And without Sebastian Blanco, you might see more of it because they're missing those pieces to be more on the attacking front foot. But Diego Valeri is the counter master. He makes passes galore. You just put the ball on him and you make runs and he's going to give you the ball. And so I think Gio Savarese's got the right game plan. He's got the right scheme. He's got the right players, and the team's going to be able to make a run at MLS Cup. Now, do I think they're going to make a run at the Supporter Shield using this style? I don't think so. I think they're going to have a few of the games that kind of simmer out because they won't score early. And when they don't score early, you'll see more 0-0 draws or 1-1 draws. So I don't think that they're going to keep up in the Supporter Shield race, but they could prove me wrong in that regard. As for the Vancouver Whitecaps, I think them playing in Providence Park as the home team is not doing them any justice. Plus, it's going to take them some time to get used to. They have a lot of games between now and the end of the season at Providence Park, and I think it will start to feel more like home the more they play there. But this was just another road game down in Portland to them, and it's going to be a tough environment to get points, especially with the quality on this Vancouver side. How'd you feel about Vancouver being the home team in this game, Eddie?
It was weird. And I know that you and I weren't the only ones that felt this way. Everyone that I saw on social media, the commentators, everyone said that this was just weird to have a home match for Vancouver in Portland against Portland. Another thing that I found interesting is the commentators were saying that Vancouver is staying at the local Hilton in Portland, and they are the only tenants at the Hilton.
They rented out a whole hotel for the team. That's
Hotel.
cool.
Yeah. So that's going to be their home away from home for the rest of the season. Don't know how fun that's going to be for the team. And I can definitely see that wearing on a team, knowing that you're not going to get to sleep in your own bed for your home nights. It's pretty much you're on the road for the rest of the season, and that's going to wear on the Vancouver. They might squeak into the playoffs, but it's going to be a tough road. I'm not going to say that they're not going to do well this season. You can definitely do well, but it's definitely going to be hard. Another thing I thought was interesting about this match, by the way, was the fact that a number of players for for Portland were on the bench, just resting. I thought that was very interesting for this one. You had Diego Valeri on the bench. You had Nezgoda on the bench. You had Abobasi on the bench. Mimi Chara on the bench. So it looked like Portland was just kind of easing back, putting out a B plus, A minus lineup. They had Polo, Williamson, and Diego Chara out there, along with uh, Clark in back in goal. But how did you feel about that lineup going up against Vancouver in a Cascadia Cup match? Did you feel like that was maybe a little disrespectful, or what do you think?
Well, one, it was the Whitecaps, which we know don't have a lot of quality on the field to begin with. For that reason, I think Savarese felt confident playing his B plus ish lineup. I mean, he kept the middle of the field. His central four were all starters. His Williamson, Diego Chara, Zuprich, and Mabiala, all starters. He changed up top, and he changed a little bit on the wings, but he kept that central four and said, with these four, we'll be able to play Portland style soccer. Felipe Mora has had an absolutely phenomenal season scoring goals for them. So there's no reason not to give the guy a chance and to let these other players rest. Portland has had one of the most congested schedules since coming back from MIB. And I haven't quite figured out why their schedule ended up that way. And teams like Seattle and some of these other teams, they get weeks off at a time sometimes. And that's not happened to Portland yet. They do get an extended break because their next game was postponed. So that's going to help them a little bit. But it was definitely a smart decision to rest those players. Diego Valeri did come in at halftime, so he got in a good full 45 minutes. But you look at the Vancouver squad, there was no reason you needed to play a full A lineup in this game and still get 3 points.
Yeah, it did look like it was going to be another long match for Vancouver at the start of this match, with Portland netting a goal in the first 5 minutes, with Mora putting it in with the assist from Williamson. And I was very surprised, very happy to see that Vancouver was able to bunker down and make sure that no more goals were allowed in there. And another thing I really liked from the Vancouver side was that they were a lot more physical in this match.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was definitely needed.
It was a physical game. One interesting point, I know I texted you this when I noticed, but the captain for this game was Freddie Montero, which, if you've been following the Whitecaps, you know how bizarre this is. This is a player who did not get sent down to the MIB tournament. Because he opted out of that tournament, he did not get to travel for the first 3 games against the Eastern Conference Canadian teams because the coach felt he wasn't gelling with the team. They come back. He comes off the bench, doesn't do too great, but he gets that's his first minutes for this team since the MIB tournament. Then he gets to start because Cavallini got a red card, and he absolutely had 2 phenomenal games that proved to the coach that he might have been wrong by not playing him. And then within a 2-week span, he goes from bench to starter to captain of this team. It's crazy to think about and really interesting to see how that creates whether it creates more cohesion amongst the team as they go. Freddie Montero is a phenomenal player who's been playing for a long time, but to give the captain's armband away from Cavallini and put it on Freddie Montero's arm, is that going to hurt Cavallini? Is that going to make, or does he understand the reason behind it? It's all very interesting. Is it also a move for the player and coach to make amends? Because we know that Freddie Montero and Mark Dos Santos don't have a great relationship. So maybe this was Dos Santos apologizing to Freddie, and there's a little bit of some really interesting relationship games happening in Vancouver right now.
Yeah, I remember you texting me that because I wasn't really thinking about it when I was watching the match, and then you sent that to me. I was like, wow, yeah, he really does have the armband on.
He had the captain's armband on. So that was a really interesting point. 1-0 loss for Vancouver. It's not going to get any easier with the game coming up against Seattle.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I just wanted to point out one minor thing. Probably doesn't even matter, but I wanted to get your opinion to see if maybe you thought that it could have changed the outcome possibly. In the 91st minute, Ricketts and Raposo both came in, and they were on the sideline for so long that the commentators said that Ricketts looked like he wanted to turn back and go sit on the bench. I think they were probably out there for 4 to 5 minutes waiting to for the ball to go out of play. Do you think that it could have changed the outcome if they were able to get in 4 or 5 minutes earlier?
Look, it's soccer. That stuff happens. It's not a huge deal to me. If the coach really wanted to make those moves earlier, he would have told one of his players to kick the ball out. It is what it is. I don't think it would have changed the result any.
True. All right.
I'm not looking too much into it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But I thought it was an interesting point that I noticed when the match was going on. Commentators were talking about it. So let's move on to the Sounders match in LA against the Galaxy. And this one was pretty much put away quickly. I mean, at halftime, it was 2-0 Seattle. And then shortly after halftime, Seattle was able to net a third goal. And when the Galaxy scored, it was in the 88th minute, and just a consolation goal. Didn't have any chance to come back at that point. Easy 3 points, I felt, for the Sounders.
Yeah, the 3-1 scoreline for the Sounders was deserved. This LA Galaxy team has a ton of talent, top to bottom. Nobody understands where the struggles are. Chicharito, world-class player. Jonathan Dos Santos, world-class player. They've got Corona, world-class player. Then they've got youngsters, Christian Pavone, they're number 10. Their lineup says that this game should have been more competitive. Nobody doubts that, but people don't know why it's not translating on the field. There's a lot of talk about Chicharito not being a good team player, and that's the big flaw. But you watch the game, and the real flaw is that they don't put any pressure on the ball, so they don't win it in good positions. And I was listening from the LA Galaxy's broadcast, and even their broadcaster was saying the Galaxy play too slow. They get the ball and they transition too slow. That stems from two things. One, the players not being confident in the other players on the field, which some of that comes from injuries. Dos Santos hasn't played a ton of minutes. Chicharito hasn't played a ton of minutes. So that's reason one. Reason number two is LA is not winning the ball in the right areas. If you win the ball and you're running away from your own goal because Seattle's playing a ball over the top to Jordan Morris, you get that ball, it's going to take you a little bit longer to turn around and face the other way and get going towards the other team's goal. And that's because they don't get any pressure. And that lack of pressure led to two of the Seattle goals for sure were due to lack of pressure. The Jordan Morris breakaway goal and the Christian Roldan breakaway goal were both just a lack of pressure, easy ball over the top, easy through ball from Lodeiro. And so a game that looked like on paper it should have been a lot more competitive won't be until this LA Galaxy team gets a fire underneath them and starts playing defense.
Something I thought was interesting that the commentators were talking about before the game, they were trying to determine how this game might go at the time, is Galaxy are playing better without Chicharito right now. Mm-hmm. I think also in their last I think it was 3 matches before the Sounders, they had given up 4 goals with Chicharito on the field. And it's just surprising to me that they're that bad with Chicharito on the field. You'd think that he would be putting away goals and this team would be doing a lot better than what they are.
If any of our Cascadia listeners are a little confused why we're emphasizing Chicharito so much, this guy played in the English Premier League with the likes of Manchester United and has a huge history of soccer. I mean, his signing was a Zlatan quality signing. It was a David Beckham quality signing. Like, this guy can play the game. So
He's I was also going to say he's also one of the faces of the Mexican national team.
yes, absolutely. So it's shocking. It's a bit concerning. I still think LA has time to turn it around, but they still have to figure out how to win the ball in the right places. Now, that was my soapbox about LA. Let's get back to Seattle and how Seattle looks like an absolute world beater of a team in this league. They're now sit 6 points behind the supporter shield with a game in hand, so they can get 3. I know Schmetzer told us to slow down on the supporter shield talk, but this team's got a real legitimate chance. If you're going into a game on the road without your starting forward, because Rui Diaz was suspended for this game, and you still dropped 3 goals against what's supposed to be a tough LA Galaxy team, it shows your depth, it shows your quality, it shows the heart of the team. And so to think that this team doesn't have a chance at the supporter shield you'd be counting this team short.
Something I thought was interesting, and I want to get your take on how the LA commentators thought about this. The first 2 goals specifically, unfortunately, I missed the third goal, so I only got to see the highlights of the third goal. But the first 2 goals, LA was playing kind of a offside trap, which obviously did not work with Jordan Morris. And Casey Keller, who's on the broadcast team for Seattle, was dumbfounded, saying, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so Seattle's just going to play the through ball to Jordan Morris all the time because they know that he's going to outpace you one-on-one. And that's what he did twice to net 2 easy goals. One was a cross that eventually got to Cristian Roldan for the first goal of the match. But then the second goal, Morris was able to just bury it himself. But I was curious about what was the LA Galaxy's broadcaster take on it. Did they notice anything, or
they were dumbfounded as well? They know you can't give Jordan Morris a yard of space or else he's gone, and the Galaxy kept doing that, and that's how they scored 2 of their 3 goals. But I think some of it is lost in what Schmetzer did with Will Bruin on the field. And from my soccer expertise, knowing how the back line has to play, Bruin is a much stronger forward than Rui Diaz in winning and holding the ball. So because of that reason, the LA players played tighter to him to try to prevent that, because he holds the ball, then he dishes it out to Ladero, Cristian Roldan, Jordan Morris, and move it forward. They wanted to limit that. And Bruin did a phenomenal job of winning pretty early, quite a few balls over the top, to force LA's line to step with him. And when that happened, that freed up the space for Jordan Morris in the back. So while both commentators were kind of bashing on LA for doing it, you cannot miss the fact that it was Will Bruin's movement that created that space. And that if it were Rui Diaz in that space, it may have been a different result. I think Bruin and Morris actually work better systematically than Rui Diaz and Morris. Now, I would never start Bruin over Rui Diaz because the guy finds goals in big games like nobody's business, and Bruin isn't that quality of player anymore. He's up there in age, but it goes to show that they can start a Bruin type player and have different options to score goals.
Yeah, still get results.
Mm-hmm. Still get results.
Is there anything else that you can think about for this match? Because it was pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. LA team that just has to figure themselves out, and a Seattle team that's playing like they can be one of the best in the league.
All right, so we ready to move on to our previews?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited about this Seattle-Vancouver game. Yeah. I wish we could do a Portland preview, For those of you who haven't checked out the news, I think most of you have heard by now, Portland's game against Colorado has been postponed because of COVID-19 tests being positive and them retesting and all that stuff. From what I read, it's mostly or all Colorado as of right now. So I think Portland's okay. We need to keep seeing how that situation develops. But that game has been rescheduled for a month from now to November 4th. So we'll give you that game in a month.
Yeah, I was actually about ready to bring that up, so I'm happy you brought it up. So since that game's being pushed back, let's get into our Cascadia Cup match with Seattle and Vancouver. This match is going to be played in Seattle. And I really don't see this going any other way than what it was like down in Florida for the MIB tournament. And just before we went on the air, John, you told me the Vegas odds for this one, and it sounds like if you're a Vancouver fan, maybe put some money on it.
Yeah, they've got Vancouver plus 1,600 was what I saw, and Seattle minus 569. If you follow the odds for these MLS games, that is astronomical. I don't think I've seen odds so stacked in one team's favor since this season started and they started putting the odds on MLS.com. Now, those numbers can change heading up to the game time, but it shows the trend of both of these teams. It shows that Seattle is the heavy favorites, and they should be. They are the top team in the West, and Vancouver is going into Seattle trying to get a result that I don't think will happen. I mean, just look at the statistics. The top three scorers for the Sounders, Rui Diaz with 7 goals, Jordan Morris with 6, Ladero with 3. The top three scorers for the Whitecaps, Montero with just 2, Cavallini with just 2, and Nowinski with 2. So you could take the top 3 scorers for the Whitecaps, and they have scored as many goals as Jordan Morris and 1 less than Rui Diaz has. So there's a reason for such a heavy favored Seattle squad in this game.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for Vancouver. Will they be ready for the test? I think they'll definitely come out with a pretty good defense to try
I'm
to
going to
counter.
shock you with my prediction. I'm going to shock you. I've got upset special coming for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh. I mean, look, form aside, this is still a Cascadia matchup. You still have got Vancouver and Seattle. And Vancouver likes to beat Seattle in Seattle. There's no other way to say that. I know that recent results would say it favors Seattle, but with Freddie Montero and Andy Rose both on the Whitecaps coming back to Seattle to play against their former team, I'm gonna say that Vancouver wins this game. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna do it.
By how much?
I'm gonna say 2-1.
2-1.
I'm gonna say 2-1. But that's me just going bold this week. So.
Because it hasn't been working out lately for predicting Vancouver to lose to help them win. So,
I haven't predicted Vancouver right all year, so might as well go bold.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know that Rui Diaz has been called up to his national team. I was trying to look for it. Do you know when he gets called up?
I do not. That's a good question. That is a very good question. Like I said, I don't think that would factor too much because Bruin is not a bad sub to have.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious on if it takes effect immediately or if he's going to have a week before he goes back. Either way, I think that this is going to be heavily favored, obviously, for Seattle. I would definitely love to see Vancouver kind of push their weight around. I would love to see this be a physical matchup. I would love to see something close to what we saw with Vancouver and Portland. But I think Seattle's just going to take it to Vancouver, and it's just going to be too much for Vancouver. And I'm thinking 3-1 for Seattle.
Yeah, your prediction is more accurate. Mine's more playful. Yours is more accurate. Uh, Aside from the players we've mentioned, both teams added players over this last week. I don't expect either of them to get in the game. Maybe Evan Bush for the Whitecaps because he's a goalkeeper. He doesn't have to figure out a system as much. The Sounders got Roman Torres back from Miami, so he's back on the squad. I don't expect to see him in this game.
Really?
Uh, yeah, he just got back. Schmetzer's MO, not to play those. I mean, Brad Smith didn't play his first game back. He came on his second game. He came off the bench. So I just don't. I don't see a reason for him to rush Roman Torres into the lineup if we have healthy other players. Roman Torres will get playing time. There's a reason they brought him back, but just because of the time to gel and get into fitness and all those things, would need to be there. Evan Bush, on the other hand, being a goalkeeper, I think there's higher chance of him playing than Roman Torres.
The reason why I think I could see Roman Torres playing in this match is for the fact that it is so lopsided for the odds, and I don't. He would not start. Sounders did not pick him up to be a starter. It's very clear that they picked him up to be a depth piece. I could see him in the 18 and only coming in if the Sounders are up by a couple goals, just to get
What
him.
if they need a late goal off a set piece? Maybe because
I could still see him coming in actually.
yeah.
But
If he's in the 18, he could come in the last, I would say 75th minute and beyond. You could possibly see him.
Yeah, but for the most part, I think it would just be to get some playing time to gel with the team.
Mm-hmm.
I am curious to see if Evan Bush gets into this match. I think Hasal is still on.
Hasal's out the rest of the season.
He's out the rest of the season.
He's out
I didn't
the
know
rest
he was
of
out the rest.
broken tibia, broken or fractured something. I don't know the specifics, but Hasal's out the rest of the season. That's why Bush was such a big pickup.
Okay, I had only heard of the concussion protocol.
No, he fractured. I want to say tibia. I don't have the article up with me to recall the exact bone, but it is a fracture. He's out the rest of the season. He's not going to see another minute. I know you're disappointed.
I really am disappointed. And also Meredith, as much as I love the guy, and how much he's been really great for Vancouver in the time that he's gotten to play. In fact, in that 6-0 loss to LAFC, after looking at the tapes, the team had said none of the goals against him were his fault. And then he only gave up that one goal in Portland. He did pretty well, I felt, the rest of the match in Portland. It's just unfortunate for him, and they need to go another direction and pick up Bush. So I can definitely see him getting into this match.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'm curious about of what you think is, do you think Brad Smith gets into this match as a starter, or do you think he comes off the bench again?
Could go either way. I would love to see him start. He's one of the best left backs in the league. Last year he was. He's back. There's no reason for him not to start with this team. He knows Schmetzer's system, and so it could happen. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he gave him a little bit more time to get going.
If he started, he'd be starting over Nuhu. So Nuhu would be coming off the bench.
Yeah, Nuhu or even Jovan Jones. He starts at left back sometimes too. So
yeah, I can see Jovan maybe going pushed up to midfield.
yeah. So I found the article. He is your concussion was right. He does have a concussion as well, but he will miss an indefinite period of time due to a concussion and a stress fracture in his left tibia. Indefinite amount of time. I guess technically they didn't officially rule him out the rest of the season, but by bringing in Evan Bush, I think you can conclude that they're going to give him the rest of the season to get healthy.
Yeah, especially when you have I think a pretty certifiable backup goalkeeper in Meredith. So yeah, it's pretty obvious that Bush is going to be coming in as the starting goalkeeper.
Hmm. So I think the Whitecaps, I think Montero is going to get them the win, get them 3 points. And Seattle's going to be bummed out that they missed out on another Cascadia victory.
Well, it'll definitely be an interesting match. Again, I'm hoping for a physical match. I love the Cascadia matchups. Portland, Seattle, Seattle, Vancouver, Vancouver, Portland. Does not matter. I love them all. It'll be interesting, and we'll just have to see what happens. We would love to hear from you all. Like, comment. What are your thoughts on this match? Do you think that either of us are crazy? Do you think it's gonna be a draw, or what do you think? Anyways, as always, go Cascadia. Can't wait to see you again.